Welcome back to another episode of This Week in Indies, where the fun never ends. On this episode, we are chatting about book series. Now, I hope some of you at least watching are series addicts like ourselves. But how do authors know when to turn something into a series? Do the characters make that decision? Does the story just fall that way? Does the author go in knowing originally that it's going to be a series? We'll answer these questions and more as we gather at the round table. And this week, we have another exciting indie connection as C.L. Cannon brings us books by indie authors similar to Saint by M.K. Lobb. Then, hang out with us towards the end of the show for a brief glimpse into the writing world of A.J. Mulligan. So guys, sit back, grab a fresh cup of coffee, and get ready for a good time. We're going to have a lot of fun diving into the world of book series today. Here's your host, Madeline Dale. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode. I'm really excited to talk about this topic because not only do I write book series, but I'm kind of a series addict and will literally make myself sick binge reading book series. But I'm also really excited for the panel we have today because there are so many good authors to chat with about this topic for you guys. We're going to have so much knowledge and information to share, and most likely some personal experiences. But before I bring them in to let them introduce themselves, I want to mention for you guys watching on Facebook, send a star to let our hosts and producers know how much you appreciate what they do here at GoIndieNow. Every time you contribute, you get entered into our season prize package drawing with gift cards, swag, and more. And while I have your attention, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and share this live. Even if you're watching it later, share it. I know there's a ton of series addicts out there like myself. And you can find all of my stuff at my website here. But let's bring all these beautiful faces in. Hey, guys.
Hey.
Hello.
So we're going to go around and I'm going to let you introduce yourself and tell the viewers about your writing briefly. So we're going to start with Wayne.
Oh, good heavens. My name is Wayne Trammell. I am in Las Vegas. I started writing a bunch of nonfiction business books and still do, but my fiction, I have one standalone, 2-book series, and I'm just finishing the third in a 3-book series, which leads me to fear for my future. If such things continue. But it is lovely to have you all here, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yes. AJ?
Hi, I'm AJ Mulligan. I write across a wide range of romance, paranormal, sci-fi, contemporary. I write series and standalones, so it just depends on what my mood is and what muse is telling me.
Ooh, I like it. All right, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah Berman, author goddess. I write pretty much anything that gets in my head. Mostly it tends towards paranormal fantasy, and I have a series that I'm writing in fantasy, a series that I'm writing in paranormal romance, and a third series that I'm kind of starting.
Ooh, nice. And our amazing graphic designer for GoIndieNow.
Hello everyone, I am Karina Gantus. I'm CEO of Author Assist Limited. I publish and market and promote authors' books safely and correctly. I'm also an award-winning and best-selling author with 14 fiction titles. I write all different fictions, all different genres, all different kinds of stories, which you'll learn in today's episode. This is going to be fun, fun, fun.
Yes, guys, I am so excited. So I am curious, with your series, when you began with the thought, was it a series in your head first, or did it turn into something later?
Yes and no. Usually I start with the idea for the first book, and then if it doesn't seem to be encompassed in just one book, I will expand. But sometimes I just get the idea for a full series right off the bat, and I just kind of separate it out into the little parts that it will be later on.
Ooh.
It kind of depends. My first series was an accident. It was never intended to be a series. My first novel was a standalone. I wrote my second novel, Akra's Bastard, as a standalone, and it had this lovely epilogue with Luca as an old man looking back on his life. And my daughter informed me that if I left the book that way, she would put me in a home and never visit. And so I wrote the second book, which turns out to be, I think, one of the best things I've ever written, Akra's Orphans. And then I kind of went, historically, there's no logical next story. And also, do I want to invest a year of my life in a book that nobody read the first two of? So then I decided to go purely mercenary and write the Johnny Lycan series, which was always intended to be at least a trilogy. And I'm finishing book 3 as we speak.
We lost Karina, but she'll pop back in a second. So, Sarah, what are your thoughts?
Most of the series that I've written, I knew pretty early on, like in the planning stages, that they were series. And because I tend to resist series, actually, because I have so many ideas that it's like, no, I don't need this to turn into 5 books instead of 1 book. But, every now and again, I'll be like, it's just too much. It's too much to be anything but a series each, or, alternatively, it's a group of characters and each character needs their story told individually, something like that. So I usually know pretty early on that it's going to be a series, and I'm pretty resistant to taking a standalone and making it a series just to make it a series because of that. So
talk to my daughter, please. The demon seed backed me into a corner, and
I believe it, Wayne. I mean,
but it created one of your best works. So like everybody has their own journey to go on.
Yes.
All right. I just felt, because I feel like I'm doing the current series. I mean, I love Johnny Lycan. I think the books are fun and the story arc makes sense.
It does.
But I feel like I'm writing a series because I'm supposed to write a series, because that's the only way you make any money. And my soul is in standalones. I love a good standalone story, and I always, when I'm doing a series, I feel like Wile E. Coyote. I run off the cliff and I'm like out here before I realize the cliff isn't under me.
Yes, that is. Oh my gosh, that is a very accurate description of that feeling. Oh man. So Karina, I want to know your thoughts.
Okay, so the Toxic series started off as working with another author, and we were doing 1 book. It wasn't going to be a series, it was going to be Toxic. But we created such an amazing world together that we decided we couldn't leave it as 1 book. So that's now gone on to 3 books. I think it's going to stick to a trilogy. We've got a really good, satisfying ending. Whereas the Illusional Reality, which is a young adult fantasy, was inspired by Tolkien. I came back from the cinema after watching the first movie, Lord of the Rings, 1 hour journey back home. Illusion of Reality was written in my head. The plot, the characters, everything that was going to happen. Nothing changed, in fact, for the original idea. Second film, second book. Third film, there wasn't a third book. I decided to keep it as a duology and not a trilogy like Token. So that was the difference there. But when I wrote the first book, or when my mind wrote the first book, I didn't know that I was going to be writing book 2 after watching the second film. It was just something that needed to be done after the inspiration that I got from Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. And with the Outlaw series, which is dubious in itself because it's a young adult, first book is young adult, and the second books, well, second, third, and fourth book are all 18 plus. And they get more graphic and more explicit down the line, so you can't really have them as a series, which is why I'm writing an adult version of the first book now after 20 years later. But anyway, digressing there. The first book was going to be a one-off. It was a book that I needed to write. It was a book that I had to write. I wrote it. I was satisfied with it. Finished. This is my first book. I had no intention of writing any other books until the fans wanted a sequel to that first book. Each of the books, they have a very, very thin thread that threads them into a series, but they are all, as far as I'm concerned, they're all standalones, even though they're called the Outlaw series.
Ooh, I like it. I definitely have to say, I'm going to throw my thought process in here. My first book series, the Phase Shifter series, was an accidental series too, kind of like Wings. And it just kind of like, I got to the end of it and was like, oh, you want to keep going? Okay, like, let's see where this goes. So, man. But as you guys have gotten into writing those series, I'm curious, how did you keep track of the different characters? This is always something that's befuddled me because there's so many different ways and I had to learn how.
I've created notebooks that have notes on each character's personalities, descriptions, etc. And I have cheated and gone back and opened the old file and just skimmed through until I found what I was looking for. If I forgot about a character's certain characteristics, so yeah, I'll go back either through the file of the original story that they appeared in, or I will create a whole. I've got whole notebooks that are just full of this world, and that's kind of how I keep it organized, quote unquote.
Nice. And I totally forgot to mention Anita is hanging out with us today too, guys. I dove right into the series conversation. She says my trilogy was supposed to be a short story. Ooh, man. But yeah.
I'm impressed by people who can do that notebook tracking, create a Bible thing. I cheated because the second book in the Johnny Lycan series, I kept 2 characters and created like a whole new story. So I didn't have to track everybody. But I find myself like the color of the car. I actually had to go back and catch myself because I realized I was writing an entirely different vehicle. And so I rely on word search of the manuscript and beta readers to catch my stupidity.
Wayne, that sounds totally normal for me. I'm a pantser. I don't plot, and I have exactly the same problem, especially when it comes to getting the right motorcycle to the right biker, to the right road name, to the right character. With Illusional Reality, the second book goes on a few years, so I was able to drop some of the main characters and also introduce some new ones, so that was an easy way of doing it. But yeah, definitely looking through the Microsoft Word and trying to find places where it was first mentioned in the first book to double check that I got it right, rather than keeping a track of it like any normal person would do. Keep a track of it if you're doing a series, so you don't have to do the long way round. I don't. Yeah, I'm the same as you.
Thank you, Karina. I feel so much better. When people smarter than me do the same silly things, I feel so much better about myself.
Sarah, how do you keep up with everything?
Well, I'm going to be the weird, super organized person.
Boo.
Look, if you knew me, you would know that I need it. I need the crutch more than most. I actually use a program called Writer's Cafe to keep track of my manuscripts and actually write them. And the reason I do that is because it has really substantial like outlining thing, which I desperately need because I can pants. It's just not pretty when it comes back.
Oh.
So I have to do the planning. I have to. It's who I am. It's what I do. It's fun. But one of the things that it has is you can enter in the characters' names and short descriptions and things like that. So I use that for a brief description, and then I actually use World Anvil as kind of a wiki and like the full series Bible for all of my stuff. And, I use that to create really long articles that go into the details and the nuances of each character. So, I'm probably the one who reads my own wiki the most because I'm like, okay, what color was this random character's eyes who decided that they needed to come back right now? Oh my gosh, change their eye color 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
If I don't do that.
That is one of the tricky parts. I feel like because I've started using like a Google Doc for an Excel file to keep mine. And that's one thing I was like, I got to make sure their eye color is the same because it bothers me when it comes like you come across it that in a book you're reading and their eyes are different. You're like, wait a second, wasn't it over here that? So yeah. And as a reader, I don't like to come across those things, So
Yeah. My Nowhere World, which is right now, I'm working on the 11th story in it. So there's 2 trilogies, a short story, then a standalone, and then a follow-up novella, and then another story that's a standalone that's coming out. And it follows different characters. The trilogies all have 3 different characters and 3 different, love interest groups that follow them. And it is a little tricky, keeping track of everything, especially when you have old characters from a previous trilogy coming into a new story and they're cameoing. I know you've read Madeline. You read I can't talk.
Yeah, Irresistible
Monstrosities, right?
Yeah.
And there's a cameo in there from a character in the first 2 trilogies in that world, and you kind of it's hard to keep everything on track if you don't have your own system, whether it be Google Doc searching, your manuscript from before, or whether it be your own Bible or wiki or whatever. If you don't have your method, keeping track of all your characters can be a little difficult when you've got a growing cast.
That is so true. Yeah. Man. That's a lot. And Anita says, I accidentally called an organization by 2 different names, then retroactively came up with an explanation for the difference.
Smart.
Yes. Man, I didn't even think about that. Like, other than just the characters, like the different aspects that have a recurring thing in the story. How do you guys keep up with places? Like, is it kind of the same?
It's plot hole spackle is what it is. It's just you're basically spackling over that little plot hole you left back there. Like, oh, this was here all along. I planned it like this.
That's actually one of the few things I didn't have a problem with, because I intentionally made Chicago as realistic as possible. Like, I know exactly where the houses are. I know exactly what neighborhood things are in from having lived there for almost 20 years. And so by keeping it as close to realistic as possible, except for like werewolf detectives and stuff.
Right.
That was actually the easy part. Locations and world building was very simple.
Yeah, mine were done from places where I grew up, so things hadn't changed, names hadn't changed, and people that are from those towns will recognise places. For the world building, fantasy, you make it up as you go along, you know. I had the map made up in my head. Again, I didn't write it down. I didn't draw this map out. It's there in my head. The places of the buildings, the names, the actual world, what it's called, the places after the world, before the world, and in the between. All of those names have stuck with me through that the duology. I never had a problem remembering those.
Ooh.
My entire concept of that is built around the MCU, because in Iron Man, they did not have the acronym SHIELD, but in Captain Marvel, they did.
Ooh. Ooh. That's a really good example.
See, fans notice these
Yeah.
things.
You know, the thing is,
now.
if the MCU can handle making a mistake that is so glaring that I picked it up, then the mistakes that slip by me can't be that bad. That's how I keep myself non-anxious.
Oh, man. So as the series moves forward, do you guys have characters that argue with you about how it's going to end?
Oh, they always
No,
tell
but
us
they
what
should.
to do. my mine always tell me what they should do. I mean, I had the characters demanding their own book, you know, crashing the party and demanding their own book. You just have to push them back, you know, tell them who's in charge, you know, and make sure you do it your way. You have to listen to them. I mean, they know what they're talking about. Whether or not you follow their advice is another matter. But yeah, it's you have one way of you think the book's going to end until you get to the end. You have no idea how it's going to end.
And Joe says not if they want to live. So
I keep my characters with my muse tied up in the basement where I beat them regularly unless they obey me. No, not dealing with. Look, I have enough voices in my head. Y'all can stay out.
nice.
My characters do. I occasionally, and Maddie, you read the second Johnny Lycan book, the one set in Vegas. There were a couple of characters in that book that shouldn't reappear because I'm no longer in Las Vegas in the third book. And they kind of insisted on putting in at least cameos in the third book.
Yeah.
It happens, yeah.
I have had characters just randomly show up, and I'm like, "What are you doing here?"
Yeah, I try to.
I
keep
gotta
them
figure it
a
out
continent
because I'm the one writing it, but I don't know what they're doing there.
I try to keep them a continent apart, and they still manage to do it.
Oh my gosh.
We are sounding like loons now, aren't we? For those that are watching, this is a normal thing that we writers go through. We hear voices in our heads. We are not schizo, but it's the voices that help us to make the world we're creating and to help make the story as good as it is when you get hold of that book and you read it. So, yeah, if it weren't for these voices in our heads, our books certainly wouldn't be as good as they are, I don't think.
I don't know. You're probably better at this than I am. I write everything in first person.
Mm-hmm.
So when something doesn't go the way I want it to, it legit turns into an argument.
I gotta do the same thing because I do a lot of writing in first person myself. It's hard to get in third person for me.
Yeah, one of my favorite writing memes is one that says something along the lines of, I don't write the story. I just write the incident report. I follow the characters around, you know, and I write down the incident report because that's basically how it is. You know, you're just kind of following them around, writing down what they're telling you happens, and you're like, okay, this is where it's going. All right.
Oh yes, man. And Anita says I had a character show up in book 1, do his thing, and tell me he's the antagonist for book 4.
Bingo,
Yep.
exactly.
Oh.
Absolutely. My abnormal series, a character that was supposed to be like comatose basically becomes something more, and it's like, oh, oops, Yeah.
Yeah. Man, those characters, that's insane.
Yeah, small character, a tiny little role, just used her name and maybe one scene. She has her own book. Book 4 is all about her and her story.
Let me just throw a temper tantrum for my own book, guys. I'm that character today. So although I've had a few of those, I'm just like, I can't squeeze it in right now. Like, how do you find time to go back and give that character their own book when they're so persistent?
Short stories. I'm a huge fan of, like, if you don't have it in you to necessarily write a full, novel series, make short stories. If TV shows can do spin-offs, so can we.
Oh, yes.
Well, it's funny because in the third book in the Johnny Lycan series, while the series ends, there's a giant opportunity for this new character to have their own set of adventures. And I wish he would shut up long enough to let me finish this book before he starts that.
Is it my turn yet? Is it my turn? Daddy.
Look at me.
Daddy.
Hey, look at me. Dad.
Yes. But it's so hard. Like, I had to stop writing on one series and start like the Ember series because she would not leave me alone. Like, and I was like, fine, I'm doing it. Like, back off.
Yeah, seriously, if you want to sleep, if you want to have peace of mind, you have to listen to them.
I just moved to a state that legalized gummies, so
Yes.
that's how I shut them up. But yeah, like the whole concept of like all of these things are networked in our brains. Like we can't help it. All of our, that is what the brain is. So of course, when we create multiple worlds, our brains are sitting there going, how are they connected? How are they connected? They're connected, right? They're connected. How are they connected? Can we connect them like this? I wrote a story that was just supposed to be another random urban fantasy short story. And next thing I know, she's like, so when am I joining this cast of characters over here? And I'm like, what? When am I joining this cast? You're not a part of this series. You're rated R. What are you talking about? No, I'm joining this cast of characters.
Well, it's funny because I realized towards the end of the first Johnny Lycan book that I had already started the Johnnyverse because years ago I had 2 short stories published which had nothing to do with each other. But the Forger of Cairo created the Anubis disc, which was the MacGuffin in book 1, and the Clairtangentist, which is this lovely little story about a pawnbroker in Las Vegas. All of a sudden, Lem becomes this major character in book 2, and they were not written with any such intent. They just kept bubbling up.
Nice. Yes. Ooh. So how do you keep characters like that from letting the story move into a series and staying as a standalone?
Well, if I could do that, Doctor, I wouldn't be here, would I? I mean,
okay.
Somebody help me answer that question, because all I want to do is write my little standalone stories.
Author Goddess is setting aside. The person who studies psychology maniacally is now in the building. What we need to do is set healthy boundaries. The magic word is no.
Well, yeah, I tried killing them off, but it turns out in urban fantasy, that's not a barrier.
That's true. That is
so true. Yeah.
Well, in Lawless Justice, which is book 3 of the Outlaw series, the character that now has her own book 4, Road Rage, like I said, she was very a small character. Well, with Road Rage, because I'd done 3 books to do with outlaw bikers, I wanted to do something a bit different. So I thought, well, what other clubs are there for bikers that aren't outlaw? So I thought, right, I'll do a legit racing Superbike Racing Club, the ones that go around the circuit and do the competitions. They're legit, they're clean. Let's do a story about them. It started off as road rage about this biker, and then the Hawks MC decided to gate crash. And so the story then became two different motorcycle clubs, two very different motorcycle clubs, with this one little character from Lawless Justice in the middle of both of them. So I didn't have much of a say in how this was going. It started off one way and ended up a totally different way, and I just let her and the Hawks run with the show.
Oh.
Can I just say that if I was betting money on who on this panel wrote books about outlaw motorcycle clubs, I probably wouldn't have bet on Katrina. Just saying.
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, don't judge a book by its cover. You haven't read Broken Chains yet, Wayne.
That's the beautiful thing about authors, though, is we get to hide behind pages, and that's why I like writing first person, because I can be anybody I want to be.
Bingo.
Yes, that's true, and you guys know what I write, so I mean. And Ghost says, "Are we there yet? Come on, talking about the characters." And I love Anita's comment. "I have a drunk homicidal muse. No is not an option." I feel like that kind of applies to like all of our little muses inside us, or multiple muses that we deal with. Man, like characters are intense, and just it is really hard to get that character to be satisfied with one book. I think I've only I hadn't done it successfully once because they're pushing me to keep writing that story too. So yeah.
The only reason my first book wasn't a series is it was based on a real person who dies at the end of the book. It was a fairly self-contained story.
Nice.
Okay, well this one,
Okay.
This one, Stone Cold, is a standalone because it's very biographical.
Mm-hmm.
It is about some of my own experiences being bullied, but then it goes into supernatural and paranormal and really gruesome killings of the bullies, which is really cool. I got a lot of closure from that. But that's the standalone because they all get killed off and everyone lives happily ever after, sort of. Big twist at the end. Not going to be a book 2 though.
Ooh, and Sarah, you held your hand over like I need to put words out.
Well, I just think that it's like I'm pretty sure the thought I was having just ran away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Come back later.
Come back.
But yeah, like the thing is, characters they're a part of ourselves. In my opinion, this is my own little gnosis thing. These characters are the stories that we need to tell as a sort of like, dare I say, salve for the soul. Like we're expressing a lot of things. Like I personally work through a lot of what I would call traumas. Like just, not all of them are huge or anything, but just like working through stuff by making an exaggerated version in my books or, whatever. And like really going through the process.
Get closure. When
we need to do that, that's when it takes over our brains.
Yeah.
So, I think that that's kind of like the gift that we're giving with these, because, like the reason that we want series, the reason that, as and from the audience perspective, that we clamor for series is the same reason we got like multiple TV shows that went on for 1 or 2 seasons way too long. Because the story had ended, but we identified so much with the characters and with what the characters were doing that we wanted more. It's just that just because we want more doesn't mean there's more for them to give us. And so like that's kind of the driving force of me cutting off so many things from being series, is because it's like, is it really that there's more story, or is it that character is just so good? And if the character is good, Yeah, well, I mean, if the character's good, fine. Congratulations. I'll write you a 1,000 word long short story so that you can speak up once in a while. That's fine. But like, I try to be really, really, really controlled about my series because I've already got like 3 or 4 of them. I don't need more blowing up. But because I'm sure all of you understand, it gets out of control in a heartbeat.
That is true. That is true. AJ, do you have any thoughts on that?
What I'm thinking about series most is the way readers react to series. There's been a huge push lately. I don't know if it's just in romance, but in a lot of reader groups, they don't want an ongoing series. They want it finished before they even touch a book. And it's very frustrating for authors, I think, because it takes time to write the books. And if you're writing the books and investing the time and energy into writing them, and then no one buys them because they're not done yet, it's very disheartening. Like they don't even buy the book and hold it to wait until the series is done to read, so at least know there's interest. You're kind of like just you're just swimming out there hoping someone catches it and tries to read it, and you don't know if they're going to read it or wait until it's done or be like, well, this series is going on too long. I can't wait. I can't have a cliffhanger. Oh no. It's really hard to decide. I've moved more towards standalones and duets because of that. Because it's hard when you know that people are just holding off because they don't want a cliffhanger or they don't want to touch it until it's been finished.
As a reader, I know the frustration there because you start off with a good series and you're getting so into it, and then the next book isn't out yet, and you don't know when the next book's coming out, and it's so frustrating because you do want to finish the full series. You want that author to have written all of those books already when you started it. So I think the only thing I could suggest for people is to check and see if a series has finished before you start a new one, and if not, just keep an eye on that author. Follow them on Amazon, follow them on social media.
Follow them, but if you're interested, at least, I don't understand people who say, I want to read this series, but not till it's done. If you know you want to read it, buy the first book, buy the second book, hold on to them. I mean, especially with ebooks, you have room for tons.
Yes.
There's room.
You mean don't start it? Don't start
Yeah,
the series.
don't start reading it, but
buy
at least,
it, hold on to
that
it.
way the author says, oh, someone's interested in this series, as opposed to,
All right,
well,
guys.
no one's buying it.
I'm going to pause us on this thought because this is a great topic. Let's have our Indie Connection real quick and revisit this because there are some great books on this week's Indie Connection, but this is totally like we are entering the realm of series with this conversation. So we'll be right back, guys.
Hey guys, C.O. Kaden here from Fiction Atlas Press, bringing you another Indie Connection. Today I'd like to tell you about some indie books that you might enjoy if you're a fan of Seven Faceless Saints by M.K. Lobb. The first book I have for you is called House of Eclipses by Casey L. Bond. Capture his heart, steal his crown, free my kingdom. Nor is the unwanted, unloved third-born of the Aten, chosen vessel of the sun goddess Sol. While she has no chance at inheriting her father's title, what she truly longs for is peace from his unrelenting hatred. Hope builds that she may finally be able to claim that reprieve when a missive arrives from the House of the Moon. The new Lumen, chosen of the moon god Lumos, seeks to broker peace with the kingdom of Helios for the first time in ages. He envisions open trade routes and an end to archaic rivalries. His dedication to this cause extends to visions of a union between the two families by marrying one of Aten's daughters, if one of the matches is a fit. Driven by his own twisted agenda, Nor's father is willing to sacrifice his daughters as pawns to steal the crown for him to further his despotic reign. But Nor has other ideas, for whomever wears the crown of moonlight holds the power of the moon itself. With such strength at her command, she could finally defeat her tyrannical father. Yet this endeavor cannot be accomplished without great sacrifice. As Nora learns more about Lumen Callum, guilt over her betrayal consumes her, burning hot as the sun itself. If only he wasn't kind and selfless, and exactly what she wanted. If only she had greater dominion over her heart. Can Nora carry out her plan and end her father's vile reign? Or will unlikely alliances allow a new day to dawn? The second book I have for you is called Knights, Witches, and Murder by R.M. Schultz. In a land where the wolf wind and mists roam like ghosts, the conflicted son of a witch was knighted by the king, knighted to repay a debt to his father. His name is Calic. He alone holds knowledge from both the knighthood and the mysterious witches of the woods. When the king's sheep are found lying in the snow, riddled with black rashes and hemorrhagic eyes, Calic is summoned to discover the reason for their deaths. Then, as human victims arrive in the city, Calic uncovers an eerie string of clues. He seeks the aid and determination of the pious Irston, his betrothed and niece of the king. But to catch the murderer, they must find answers. Answers hidden beneath a web of secrets ensnaring the royal family, a witch, an innkeeper, a priest, and a former thief. And Calic never suspected he'd have to choose between the only two things he's ever loved. The third book I have for you is called Origin by Pedro Urvi. What would you do if the Golden Gods kidnapped your sister and you were one of their slave hunters? The Sonoka, the people of the sea, have been enslaved by the Golden Gods. They live within the limits of the boundary, for only one purpose: produce for the gods or die. Kira, a 17-year-old girl, is selected along with other young girls and taken to the gods. Her brother Akai will move heaven and earth to find her. They will fight for survival, confronting a society constituted to serve the masters, and even the gods themselves in their eternal dwelling. A story of love, survival, sacrifice, and the fight for freedom. And the last book I have for you is called Unwilling Souls by Gregory D. Little. The gods are rightfully imprisoned, and Cess intends to keep them that way. But her rebel father has other plans. Cess is the daughter of a business mogul and a terrorist, each trying their best to kill the other while pretending she doesn't exist. An apprentice jailer of the gods, Cess spends her days learning to forge the tools needed to maintain the gods' prison in the hollowed-out center of the planet. When the prison is mysteriously attacked on her 16th birthday, Cess is forced to flee after the secret of her parentage is revealed. Suddenly on the wrong side of the law, Cess realizes the very father who abandoned her may be the only one who can protect her. But some secrets are darker than parentage. On her way to find her father, Cess will uncover truths about her family and herself that will shatter her understanding of the world and risk the return of the gods themselves. Okay, that's all for me this week. I'll see you next week on the Indie Connection. Bye!
Always good books on there. And bringing us back to our topic, yeah, readers don't get that waiting increases the chances the series won't get finished. It's easy for authors to get discouraged and move on. It also is harder for indies to finish a series if they don't have sales. That's why you see a lot of fantasy authors doing rapid releases. And Vanessa says, I'm so late, sorry, but I'm here for the end. And it bugs me so much when people do that. They wait to buy the series until it's finished, like for real.
Well, I actually have a question for everybody, because I never assume that I'm the average person, because I never am. But I'll very often pick up a book and it's in the middle of a series, and it tells me whether I want to go back and read the series. So there's this balance of, I need the book itself to stand alone, right? There needs to be a story that I can follow, and I don't want a huge data dump of all the stuff I need to know to catch up.
Yeah.
And how do you? I think I've done a pretty good job of that.
Yeah, it's a balancing act, Wayne.
Yeah.
You don't want to go into, as you know, Bob, right? You don't want to have those conversations.
No series recap here.
Yeah. And Vanessa says, I think readers don't know that them not buying the books is actually what kills the series. And that is so true.
Absolutely.
So, and it's just, that's an instant kill. You say that, especially like on TikTok and stuff, people talk all the time about waiting. And I'm like, no, like you can do that with a bigger published author, but indies, we need you to buy our books.
But that's also why we write books. They're on paper. They're there. You can pick them up anytime. It's not like it's a stage play that if you miss it, it's gone.
Well, okay, so this goes into like my favorite rant of all time, which is that all creatives should have a mincome because we need to be supported while we create this great big gorgeous thing that people kind of don't want to touch until it's done. And it's like even just writing a single novel takes so long and so much work that we're not getting paid for at that time.
Bingo.
Like we we're doing all of our effort ahead of time. We're getting paid after the fact. And I think that like because it's so different from like most people's working experience, it's very difficult for them to understand that, if I were to continue living and, because I need to buy food and have a house to live in and electricity to type my words on, or even a piece of paper to scribble them on, like whatever. I need resources to continue existing, to finish the series. And I understand it from the reader perspective because I've had the reader perspective. But, while yes, technically it's not the audience's problem that I can't survive for writing 6, 7, 8 books. But at the same time, give me something so that I can hang on to that deep thread of hope that I will eventually get
readers,
anything back.
They don't understand how it works for us writers, us authors, especially independent authors that aren't contracted. We don't click our finger and the book's written. It takes a lot of time, which a lot of us don't have because this isn't our full-time job. We have a job as well. We need another job to keep us living, to keep us going as authors. So we don't have a lot of time. We need to be in that frame of mind, that mindset. We need to be in the zone to write. We can't just write when we want to write. It has to be the right time for that. And it costs money, people. This isn't free. It's not free to publish. It's not free to edit, to format, to get a beautiful cover, to promote, to market, to get that release out there so that you can read that book. It is not as easy as you think it is. And so we are struggling and we're doing our best to get those books out to you. I mean, I know you've been waiting 20 years for one of mine, but, another
it's still coming.
It's coming. It's 80% the way done. It is being done. It is happening. It will happen. So just, be patient.
And Vanessa makes a good point about this. Actually, all authors need that, talking about people buying their books, not waiting till the end. Only the biggest sellers don't need people to buy their books. Even regular traditional published authors need it more so than indie, even really, because indie authors can still choose to write. Traditional authors will get dropped. And Joe adds, even stage plays have revivals too. Which I guess, like, people that are not like Sarah J. Maas, that's a good point. Because we do, as all authors, we need people to buy our stuff so we can continue writing those amazing words like you guys.
Yeah, that's why, like, I mean, I hate to be, that person because, I mean, the truth of it is when it's me, I'm of course like, oh, no. Please do not spend your money on pathetic me. But, I'm like, support your authors through Patreon and Ko-fi and all these other things. Support the Kickstarters because, we out here, it's a struggle on the front end. And some of us are like, I'm super lucky. I have a sugar daddy. My hubs makes just enough, barely enough money to support the entire household. So as long as I keep like all of the household stuff running, I can do whatever I want with the rest of my free time. It's not fun though. I'm not gonna sit, I'm not sitting around eating bonbons. I'm sitting here crying because which bill do I pay this week?
Yeah.
But it gives me time to write. And that is a huge thing that most of us can't, like, it is completely standard in the United States to have a 2-income household, period, end of story. You just can't do it. And it's, I find myself very fortunate to be able to do more of the unpaid labors so that my husband can work overtime and stuff like that. But that's not going to be everybody's experience, and it's still not a great experience. There's still lots of struggle. And it's, I used to have a friend who was like, it was about the Wheel of Time, which, now that the series is coming out, more people are familiar with it. But 14, oh my God, books in that series finished after the author died.
That's true.
And I had a friend who was like, I'm not reading that series until the author is either done or dead. And I'm like, are you kidding me? It will take you years to get through the series. They're like 1,000 pages a book. And the same thing is happening with like the Game of Thrones series, Song of Ice and Fire. Like it's now a running joke that all of these great series are still being, waiting to be finished, and maybe they'll never be finished. And like, that's just the thing, though. That's just the risk you take reading a book. If you want to read a series that is finished, try something from the 70s.
Very true. And Bo says we are such an impatient society these days. Instant gratification sucks if you're an indie. And Vanessa has a good question. What are your thoughts about series spin-offs, like a series that is spawned because of a current series?
That's what Sarah was saying, to write short stories to satisfy the reader, to satisfy your characters, and to give you some peace of mind, and without having that stress on you to get another book done. So I think a series spin-off as novellas, novettas, and short stories is a good idea.
That's actually the way I'm ending Johnny Lycan. It leaves the door open for continued books, but not necessarily in it. They're in what I call the Johnny verse. They're not, but they're not specific to Johnny. It's actually a new character who comes into the third book, but it's this potential for kind of endless stories that wasn't intentional, but it's happening.
Yeah. AJ, do you have any thoughts on that too?
I kind of did that with the Nowhere world, because it started out with 3 main female characters, and then it spawned off another character set, and then another character in the book I'm currently writing, which was a minor character in the previous books. But I keep it all in the same continuation, the same world, same, so I just continue the timeline onward. The Abnormal Verse has a couple of spin-off books. There's a prequel story, and there's a kind of a medium in-betweeny story that was written it takes place between books 2 and 3. So spin-offs definitely happen. You get the characters that need a little more time of their own than the series itself will allow. So you have to kind of figure out where you can split the timeline or split the path and give them their time that they need.
With the Toxic trilogy, the first one is about people that live inside a mountain because of acid rain. And the second one, which we didn't know we were doing at the time when we wrote the first one, we decided to move away from the mountain. What about all those people that have been cast out of the mountain? Now, we know that some of them have survived. How have they survived? Let's tell their story. And so it's a spin-off to Toxic, the first book. So this is all happening outside of the mountain, totally different people, totally different species. But then the third book is bringing the two together. So it's a series within a spin-off within a series, if you think of it like that.
Nice.
Now, I find it interesting that, like, and I don't know if this is what you meant, but there's kind of an implication when we talk about like these spin-off series that this is kind of a new thing. But the thing is, like, we had the one that's coming to mind is, Pern. Awesome world. And that is kind of the key to a good series with spinoffs, is the world itself is intriguing. And with Pern, you had, the straight up Dragon Riders portion, but then you had like this little Harper trilogy coming around and just, popping up and saying hi. And then this, that, and the other thing came in. Like there were several aspects of that world, that whole series, that we would now categorize as a spin-off series. So it's been done. It's common.
Yeah.
And I think that it's just a really great way for exploring, the thing, because we don't just build characters, we also build worlds. Even when we're like working within the contemporary world, we're building these nuances that make that world different from the world that we live in. And that can be so intriguing. And if that's what the audience is in love with, the specific characters can come and go, but you have all of this world. Yeah. And if it's anything like our world, there's, billions of people that you can explore within these worlds. It's fabulous. I think that says a lot about the world building aspects.
Yeah.
I take a little bit of comfort as we're complaining about all this stuff. I take a little bit of comfort in the fact that the Three Musketeers is actually one of 6 books. It's like there are actually 6 Three Musketeers novels. And if readers now are complaining about it being slow, they were handwritten.
That's true. So right? True.
I mean, let's just get a little perspective here, people.
Oh, man.
My books are handwritten. I held my hand up, pen and paper, always straight away, first draft, handwritten.
And there are a lot of people that still do it like that. But all right, guys, we have come to our ending here. So before we turn it over to AJ for the final 5, let's go back around and tell everyone where they can find you on socials and where they can snag a copy of one of your books. I'm going to start with Karina and move across to Sarah. So.
Okay, well, you can just Google me. My name will come up, Karina Gantis, for Author Assist or for my books. I'm also a podcast, TV and radio host with Behind the Pen. And I also host the Authors Pitch Party. So any authors out there that are interested in that, get in touch and I'll let you know more about it.
Sweet.
I am Author Goddess. You can find me at authorgoddess.com. From there, you can find all of my books, and all of the clicky buttons tell you all of the places where you can buy them. Mostly it's Amazon. The primary series is the Runespell series, starting with Too Weird. So see you everywhere.
Yeah.
Me. I am so easy to find. I am not hiding at all. On Twitter, I'm W. Turmel. I love engaging with people. My website is wayneturmel.com. Probably the best place to find the books is Amazon, because that contains both series as well as my nonfiction stuff. And like I say, not difficult to find. There is only 2 Turmels in the United States, according to Google. So there you have it.
Impressive. And guys, I'm Madeline Dale, the Chapter Goddess. You've found GoIndieNow. Hit that like button, subscribe while you're here. We've always got fun shows dropping, new things on the horizon. Even though we are coming to the season end for This Week in Indies pretty fast, there is still so much more to come. And I know every single one of these authors would love it if you followed them, including myself, and checked out their work. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to this amazing USA Today bestselling author as she gives us a glimpse into her book world and all the amazing things she has created.
Thank you very much. And you can find me at ajmullican.com/author. All my social buttons are up there. You can click, and follow me on everything there. And I'm going to read a little bit from Packed with the Pack, which is the first Nowhere book. and it opens the world and starts it. And I'm going to actually start on chapter 3 because I'm going to be mean like that. So here we go. I awaken amidst clouds and fluff and down and all the soft things, though something firm wraps around me in stark contrast to the plush surroundings. I open my eyes to see 2 massive tattooed arms encircling me. Dozens of black and gray skulls of different sizes cover the arms, intertwined with plumes of wispy smoke. The effect is stunning, and I lie there entranced for several minutes before I realize a couple of things. 1. The owner of the arms, who is snuggled up behind me, has opted to wrap them around my chest. 2. My chest, and I presume the rest of me, is buck-ass naked beneath those arms. I shriek and burst free, tripping on the down comforter in my efforts to escape. I land hard on my knees next to the bed I've been lying on, and a string of curses flies from my lips. A deep, rumbling voice bellows in laughter from the bed. Graceful and ladylike. Guess we got a package deal when we came to your rescue, huh? My cheeks burn as I grab the comforter and yank it off the bed to cover myself. Once I'm as decent as I'm going to get, I turn to face the man who was feeling me up in my sleep. I've got my mouth open to give him a piece of my ladylike mind about it, but when I get a good look at him, all I can manage is to gape in awe. If I thought my hallucinations from earlier had mega hotties, this guy is a fucking god. 6'5", of pure sin wrapped in muscle and sinew, and a six-pack that trails down to that sexy V that leads to a sheet that's draped over the part I am most curious about. Damn it. My eyes are up here, Red. His snark reminds me that I'm angry with him. I glance up to his chiseled face and glare into his ocean blue eyes, ready to reply with some snark of my own. My name's not Red, you jerk. Wow. That's the best I can do? What the hell is wrong with me? Jerk, huh? He sits up on one smooth motion and rests his elbow on his knees, none of which disturbs the sheet, much to my dismay. I seem to recall getting stabbed in the act of saving your life. If that's jerk behavior, then I guess I'm guilty as charged. When did you save my life? Last night? That's right. I almost died last night. Was it really just last night? I peek under the blanket and see a blood-stained bandage on my flat stomach. I touch the area with gentle fingers, but nothing hurts. After a fall from the bed like I just took, I should be in agony with that cut I had. I give the red spot on the bandage a good, solid poke, but still nothing. Curious, I peel away a corner of the tape, just enough to see how bad the wound underneath really is. In place of the jagged cut from last night, there's nothing but an angry-looking raised pink scar. How long was I out? Having fun under there? I wrap the comforter tighter around myself and give the stranger on the bed my best indignant look. Pervert. And that's all I'm going to read for you now. But as you know, it's always time to go indie now. And we'll see everybody next time.